Hi, Shelley, and welcome to What's Your Next podcast.
Hi, Laura. Thanks for having me.
So happy to have you here. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I write about Manhattan, but I moved to New Jersey,
Yes.
and I spend my days writing books.
Yes, I love this. I'm sorry we were sharing our Jersey stories. I lived in Jersey for a long time. I did work in Manhattan. I worked actually
Me
most
too.
of the time in the financial district area by City Hall, the Bridge. I worked at Park Row, worked down at the World Trade Center. I lived in Jersey City, both in the Exchange Place area, which is right across the river, and then Journal Square
I
City.
came after I moved out here. I commuted in across the GW Bridge. So
Yes, you're like actually northern. You're like you actually have to take.
yeah,
You have to
yeah.
go to Washington Heights. You got to go to the.
Actually, yeah, that's a good idea. Actually,
Yeah. So, talk to us about your journey to writing historical fiction. Like, how did you get? Was it something interested in looking at stories, like history, or was it something that you were fascinated? You were like to explore this areas because your latest book is about 1920, 1915 America, New York City, and some of the censorship.
well, before I was a writer, I was a dancer. And so when you dance, you're sort of done at 40. And
Yeah,
so when I had kids and we moved to Jersey for the schools, and so a friend of mine who also had moved out, we did the Rice Krispie treats and
yeah,
the school trips we were like, but maybe we want to do something for ourselves. So we started going into the city on Wednesdays, drop the kids off, go to a museum, see one exhibit, have lunch, be back in 3. And so one day she says, I want to do something different just for me, just in our spare time. I said, yeah, I've been thinking about that too. And she said, you should write a mystery. I was always reading them. I said, a great idea, except that I never know who done it until the very end. She says, oh, and here's the thing that people always say, and it's so not true, but we were so silly. How hard can it be? We went and got a book on how to write a mystery. I wrote a mystery and I sent it to a contest and it made the short list. And then the long story is I got an agent and he sold the book. And the thing is, I wrote this just on a sort of a dare. And he calls me back and I didn't know the industry. I didn't know how hard it was to get an agent or anything or how hard it was to sell anything. And he called me and he said, I never even met him yet at this point. He goes, well, I just got an offer for your book. And I went, wow, that was fast. And he says, yeah, it's a contract for 3 books. And after that, I stopped listening. And then when he finally said, Shelley, you listen, and I go, but I only have 1 book.
my gosh,
That was my introduction to writing. So it hasn't all been that easy. Trust me.
I know. So you start with mysteries. What
Yep.
kind of mysteries do you like? Because actually, I'm a new mystery reader. I've transitioned out of romance. I started with cozy mysteries, were a great introduction to mystery.
Yes. Well,
And then I moved on to mysteries and all levels of mysteries, from historical mysteries to actually like regular mysteries to millennial mysteries, which is like the new thing.
yeah.
I
Haven't
mean, I
gone
still
there.
don't know. I don't even care about that. It doesn't really matter who done it.
I remember writing a mystery and getting 2/3 of the way through and decided I liked the murderer too
Yes.
much. I had to go back and say, okay, you're going to stay because it's a series.
Yeah.
Well, you're going to stay now. Have to find somebody to be the murderer. So, well, I'm writing historical women's fiction now.
Yes.
I sort of feel like that's my real place. It took me a while to get here, but so I like historical mysteries, but on the lighter side because the world is not so light. So it's nice to have a little humor with your murder. So,
Yes.
yeah, I like those. And I also like mysteries that take place in Manhattan, of course, because I know it so well. But again, not on the noir side. I'm an escapist reader.
Yeah. Yeah. I am just like you. I read mysteries that I don't care who the murderer is. It's always a surprise, but I really don't care about the murder. I care
It's
about
the
the people. I care about the experience of doing it. I care
yeah,
about like how do you find in the community and then the life part. I love now there's a lot more rom coms at it. and more
Yes.
with banter and areas, and I think that's like you need it, especially in historical. Like some of the historical, I'm like, oh, it's actually not that bad. It's like a little bit funny.
I love historicals that can get that modern flair without
Yeah.
sounding modern and out of period, and that's takes a real talent to do that.
So now you landed into historical women's fiction. You
Mhm.
probably have down the road. What was it for you to get you to that place? Obviously, you're writing about New York. Are you
Yeah.
writing about a place and setting? And New York is so rich because it has hundreds of years of history, and
Yes.
you can pick a street, you can pick a building,
Any street.
you can pick a building and have something.
It's
So,
so true.
so what's your led you to pick this particular and removing the mystery and just having the relationship, which is women's fiction, and having the character arc of growing and exploring different things?
I was writing contemporary women's fiction along with my mystery.
Yeah.
Um, just because it's like have like they used to. I don't do this. Have sorbet between the courses of your meals,
Sure.
sort of to clear your palate. I don't think we do that anymore. But it was nice to like have a mystery. And my heroine was came to New York and stays at the 1907 Plaza,
Yeah.
so she's very with it. And then my other characters were on the East Coast, but I really related to this crazy mystery lady. And then, well, actually, I remember exactly when I switched because I was maybe on my fourth thing with her, and she, of course, solves a mystery. I'm gonna add a group of visiting, possibly murderous psychoanalysts. Now, this takes place in like 1907. I know nothing about psychology in 1907. So I Googled it and I'm reading about Jung and Freud and talk therapy. And then this thing in the middle of it comes up, A New Light on Tiffany, Clara Driscoll and the Tiffany Girls. And it was about these women who created and made Louis Tiffany's lamps, the lamps in the windows, and they were virtually unknown until they were rediscovered around 2004. And I went, that's my next book. So then I had to go to my agent and said, okay, here's my next book. And they were like, oh, that sounds great. And so I just took the chance and here I am.
Here you are. And so the Sisters of Book Row, it talks the stories in 1915. It's about, we are talking about the Comstock Laws, which reader or listener who has no idea what they are, is about censorship. It's about obscene content. And in ways it was affected by conversation about birth control and other and female health services. That was considered obscene. And which is, I when I share with you, when I just met, I was like, I know you had this plan way before to what is happening in 2026 and how we have book banning, but we also have conversations, different laws about romance and obscene stuff, materials. We have birth control has been on the hot topic and
Yeah.
all of these different things. So a lot of it, 100 years later, we're seeing deja vu. Books like
Yes,
yours, like it's a really place to understand our history and where it
exactly.
came from
Exactly.
because we're not that smart. We just repeat the same thing
No,
over.
it's that 1915 was really a period where there was hope and things started changing. And Margaret Sanger was there and doing things about women's health, just like taking vitamins when you're pregnant,
Yeah.
you get a better outcome. All of that was banned. That would send you to jail. In fact, my book opens with her fleeing the country, Margaret Sanger fleeing the country, because Anthony Comstock is about to arrest her. And if she's arrested, she will go to prison for 45 years for trying to make women healthier.
Yeah.
So, but after that, we made all these advances. It was Roe v. Wade and all sorts of things for women. And then it suddenly started to deteriorate again. And strangely enough, using Anthony Comstock, who was the most vicious censor in all of American history, hated women, but he was a nutcase too. I mean, it changed what was. If he couldn't read a magazine because it was in a foreign language, he would like haul the guy off to jail for having obscene literature because what's to know? And he sort of became this sort of what we call a zombie law that's
Yeah.
so out of touch that it just isn't used anymore. But the trouble now is they're using it again But the states adopted parts of his law originally for their own states. Because, I mean, he was hired by the post office to keep pornography out of the mail. That sounds good. So it sounded like a good idea, but he was just such a perversion of the reason he was hired, and then they couldn't get rid of him. He just refused to leave. And by the time 1915 comes around, he's really kind of a laughing stock, which nobody says that these days. But he was ousted. He was a laughing stock. He was crazy. Nobody wanted to have anything to do with him. Well, here we are.
But here we are. So talked about this about the sisters and what is the book all about? Obviously, we talk about the villain, the ultimate villain of the story, but it's about sisters and Book Row, which listeners who have no idea, Book Row is Fourth Avenue in Manhattan. It's downtown Manhattan. It's where the Strand starts. It's
Yeah.
around where the Strand is. It used to be a row where there were bookstores and publishers and whole other thing.
So, yeah. So I chose 1915 because he dies of pneumonia in October. So I wore. During my research, I just grew to despise him so much. I mean, he burned 5 tons of books. He arrested on my high horse. You can forget I said all this, but he arrested like the lady that put the art catalog together because she had a photograph of a Greek statue in it, probably the David, who's nude. I mean, it's just bizarre. So I said it in 1915, and then it just happens that this is the year that Margaret Sanger fled the country, leaving behind an unpublished manuscript. So he's looking for that. And my 3 sisters who have just inherited a rare bookstore from their father. One day they find themselves in possession of a ancient, most likely stolen manuscript, which looks like it contains fragments of poems from the poetess and banned for centuries poetess Sappho. So this is the same time that Anthony Comstock has decided to turn his thugs off on all the booksellers because he's looking for stuff. It doesn't matter what stuff. And at the same time, they don't know what to do. They know they have to protect this work because it's a work of great literature. So then one day, this mysterious, rather charming, of course, stranger comes to the store and he purports to be a buyer for a private dealer who's interested in archaic manuscripts. And they're like, oh, can we trust him? Will he help us save this manuscript? Or is he just somebody posing so that he will lead us to complete betrayal and doom? Well, they decide that whatever comes their way, they have to be on the forefront of saving literature from people who are afraid to learn, people who, you know, just don't have the imagination. And so they go at it full force, mayhem ensues, and yikes.
There we go. It's like mayhem ensues. I think in some ways, the way I read this book, it felt very familiar in many ways.
Yes.
Like protecting our books and protecting literature and the level of like scrutiny and the level of other people having an opinion and then not seeing what it can actually do. It's a legacy. Like you're protecting generation, something that the people want to like trash it or steal it and then make money out of it, grip
Yes.
it. Like,
And when you steal these kind of things, you have to lock it away, never to
yeah,
share it. You have to go down in your vault and appreciate it, which is
yeah. So,
sick.
so it's powerful to have the 3 sisters and at the same time having this climate that feels familiar, which I hate to say this feels familiar 700 years later,
Mm.
and at the same time see the resolution and see there's a hope. And because we do get the suffrage movement, we get women's like advancement
Yeah.
happen. We know the history, like things progress to better.
And in the old days, he was mainly out of New York and Washington, Philadelphia.
Yeah,
But now, as soon as something like that happens, it's spread because
it's
of the
everywhere.
internet. So everybody's up in arms, or else
Yeah,
it sometimes seems overwhelming to save things that are civilization.
Yeah,
But
I was sharing with you. I live in Hillsborough County, which is ground zero for book banning in Florida. They're trying to act laws, and we have one idiot who has not read any of these books.
no, that's the thing is they don't read them. They just
They don't read them. They just write a little paragraph like ends up, and it's all about not just LGBT. It's sexuality. It's actually women's health. Like diversity, like everything is a problem because
yeah,
it's supporting something else. And it's seen how we have the fall of Roe v. Wade and like how
yeah,
women's rights are being taken away and conversations about the expectation that social media now expects women to go back to birth babies. I don't know which one money. It's so expensive. And then not work. I don't know how.
nobody, normal people have to have both people
Yes.
working.
Yes,
That's the
like
thing.
and no fault divorce. That divorce is no longer acceptable.
Yeah,
When so
I think it comes from fear. People don't
yeah,
want other people to have what they don't have, but we all. I mean, there's so
I
much stuff.
I think it's just yes, it's fear. I think it's also the fact that women have found their voice and they have new
Mm,
choices. They have choices. They choose not
yeah,
to engage. They have set the standard, and they're no longer willing to compromise
right.
their happiness to be a mother to somebody else, unless they're a child that they birth or they adopted or they surrogate or they do, you know what I mean? So it's a
Yes.
very, and so the standards are very high, and now that makes the men feel fearful, and therefore we are banning basic education. We have schools are actually the professors are getting fired, or whether we have like sports are being replaced by ultra Christian, ultra nationalists for that fear. Like it's a lot of it's fear based.
Well, people are afraid of change just by nature.
Yeah.
So they hold on to what we hold on to what we know, and we think
Yeah.
that's the right way. And so when that's challenged, the
Yeah.
first thing somebody does is, "Oh, no, don't change anything." You
Yeah.
know, "Don't change the sign on the door, don't say."
Yeah.
So it just skyrockets when it gets out into society as a
Yeah.
whole.
And there's a lot of nostalgia. And for some reason, we don't think we want to go back to the 50s.
Not me, thank you very
And there's
much.
a whole lot of nostalgia going on. I'm like, but did you actually understand what was happening there?
I'm working on a book that takes place in 1870, right?
Oh my gosh.
I keep saying, "I wanna go back to when things were civilized in 1900 or 1907 or 15," because it's funny when
Important.
you write about the same period in the same city. It's like a book that I did was around 1905 to 1915. It's every you think, "Oh, well, I know it. I'll just put in the characters," but just the number of cars on the street have multiplied
Yeah.
tenfold. There were mostly buggies and carts and horses in 1905 with a few cars. Get to 1915, and it's mostly cars and horses getting out of the way. Nobody wanted cars because they were afraid to make the horses afraid.
Yes.
So it's all the same thing.
Yeah. And you had the subway. The subway, when did the subway got built? Like it was in 1900s, I think.
Yeah.
You know, like we had all these like technology. I think it's interesting. I love the fact that you're like, we're gonna go back to 1870, which is what's happening.
And it's not even in Manhattan, it's taking place on Long Branch on at the Jersey Shore because it was the summer White House of several presidents had homes
Yeah.
down there over the years, so I thought, what you're afraid to do in Washington, you don't mind doing at the Jersey Shore, so we'll see.
Maybe it's a preamble to as millennials, the Jersey Shore as a place of gym, tan, laundry that it's partying. For me, they were just they were the predecessors of Mike the Situation. You
Yes,
know?
I know.
Okay.
Too good, and those people aren't they were from Pennsylvania, they're not even
They're from
from the Jersey
they're not
Shore.
from New Jersey.
I mean, I had talking to someone in Canada once that said, "Oh, you know the people in Jersey Shore?" I said, "They're not from New Jersey."
I'm so excited for the next book. What's your process of research? Do you go to historical archives? Do you do Google? I know like research is a little bit different than when I was researching in college because I did before the internet. So we had to go to the library. Oh.
The good old days.
Yes, before Wikipedia.
The internet can be a wonderful thing. I do mostly primary sources
Yeah.
because you can get any newspaper
Yeah.
from what back I haven't gone back before 1870. I'm
It's
probably
okay.
gonna move back
You
toward
can move back to
better
the
civilization,
Gilded Age.
but
You can move back to Gilded Age or the 20s.
once that happened is I think what a lot of us try to use primary sources.
Yeah.
The problem with using things that were written at the time is they have a certain worldview that isn't like without bias because they live in it. And also sometimes they get things wrong. But so if like if a newspaper got something wrong, all those people had it wrong too. So I try to write. I don't research further than my book or maybe a
Yeah.
couple of years because I don't want to know. I mean, we all know what happens, but vague in a grand scheme way. But I don't want to know too much more than my characters know
Yeah.
because then I feel like that's just bound to in the narrator
Yeah.
interruption thing. So I really just try to enclose us in a world, and I use other historical books and I mean history books and things that have been written now, like secondary, tertiary sources. But I really like to do most of my work, like the trial that one of the sisters goes through. That's a composite of several trials.
Yeah.
That all the dialogue in there is like totally lifted from history because it's so good. So
Yeah.
I didn't feel bad about stealing at all.
Yeah. It's just basically just sharing the story, being a
Mm,
storyteller. So let's talk some book recommendations. You're a reader, you
yep.
read mysteries, but let's talk some what kind of books do you not read? Are you reading historical? Are you reading other genres, contemporary?
I like to read I like to read historical mysteries
Yeah.
that are kind of fun.
Yes.
When I'm not right see, this is a problem. When you're writing, I feel like I don't read. I really don't read
Yeah.
any fiction while I'm writing, which is a
Yeah.
big chunk of time because you don't it's like you start reading somebody and you find yourself writing in the same rhythm or thinking in the same rhythm, or maybe they have a fact and I go, "I don't didn't know that, I haven't found that." What if you use a "I'll borrow this if you don't mind." What if it was made up? So I really try to just stay away from that. I read a lot of, like, nonfiction when I'm writing fiction, but for fun, I'd say anything goes.
I love this. Do you have any books to recommend our listeners to pick up?
I do actually, and they're not brand new.
Perfect.
When all your friends are writers,
Yeah.
you can't say, "Oh, read my book and not hers," or "Read her book and not."
Yeah.
One of my favorite go-to books, both as a writer and a reader, is This Rough Magic by Mary Stewart. I think it's from 1965. She wrote also about King Arthur, but she had a series of romantic suspense, and she's really good if you like romantic suspense. This Rough Magic, it's an out-of-work actress goes to visit her sister in Corfu, and Corfu is sort of where they think The Tempest was
Yeah.
based on. Of course, we don't know that, but anyway, in the book it is. And she just builds the suspense so wonderfully with her language, with her word choice, and with the rhythm of her sentences. She doesn't need any high-tech chases or,
Yeah.
like, stuff that interferes and leaves you at the edge of your seat. You're sort of at the edge of your seat, but it's so intense, and it just brings you there. And as a reader, I mean, as a writer, that helps you. I mean, it just inspires me to try to find that place. And as a reader, I just wallow.
Yeah.
And let's see what else I would. Oh, I love anything, and this is something I don't always read, but Susanna Kearsley, which is
Yes.
Canadian, she writes like sort of time slip stories. Somebody, and I mean, and that's a very popular genre now, I think. But I think she does it so seamlessly that, boy, I can't move my characters from one room to the next the way she just slips through like centuries. I think The Winter Sea is still my favorite,
Yeah.
but yeah, I would highly recommend any of hers.
That,
And there was one other one. Oh, I know what I was going to recommend is, oh, Elizabeth Peters. This is a historical sort of wacky, some humor. Amelia Peabody, Victorian archaeologist, and her husband Emerson and their son Ramses. They are just larger than life, funny characters that just make you want to keep reading and make you laugh and make you bite your nails. And what as a writer I really love about her is she was an Egyptologist in Chicago University. So she knows her stuff. So it's all well documented, but every once in a while she'll just slip in a little tidbit that the first time it happened, I was reading a book, so it's kind of like into archaeology for a while. I was reading I think it was Flinders Petrie. He was an archaeologist. And so I'm reading Amelia Peabody's thing and story, and she meets her husband, and he's got malaria or something, and he's wearing pink underwear. And I went, "Oh, I know who did that. That was Flinders Petrie." And he tried to keep tourists away because they would all come on the dockies and umbrellas and mess up the site. So he would wear pink long johns and scare all the tourists away. And she just slipped it into her book, and she was doing that all the time. So that was just extra fun. So those are 3 to get started on.
I love these recommendations, and I'm actually excited to really revisit Elizabeth Peter like that.
Yeah,
Actually, like
she's really
seems
fun.
like a fun one just to revisit and see time learn a little bit something new.
Yeah. She also wrote, she's dead now, but wrote romantic suspense
Yeah,
in the old classic style,
yeah,
which I kind of like.
yeah.
So, there's no gore, guts, anything.
Yes. Shelley, tell us where you can find you online.
I'm at shelleynoble.com and Shelley Noble Facebook and Shelley Noble author at Instagram. And I'm down to those now because I like those too because they're slow enough so you can actually interact with people that are liking and making comments. And everything else just got so fast. It was like a moving freight train. So I'm down to those 3, I think.
I love this, honestly. So thank you, Shelley, for being on the show.
Thank you for having me. That's fun.
Thanks for listening to the What to Read Next. For more book lists, cozy reads, and library tips, visit the whattoreadnextblog.com. Your next great read might be waiting there. Thanks for listening to the What to Read Next. For more book lists, cozy reads, and library tips, visit the whattoreadnextblog.com. Your next great read might be waiting there.